Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you. Great to see you. Thanks for being here. I've enjoyed warm hospitality from Jessup University the last couple days, and grateful to finish my time with you in worship and meditating a little bit on Scripture. I basically just want to spend a few moments with you this morning thinking through and meditating on an insight and an exhortation from the book of Proverbs that I think many of you will know. Proverbs chapter 4, the teacher Solomon says to us, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. That's what we're going to think through today. Now, we're going to think through that with philosophers' hats on a little bit, so just be patient with me. But we're trying to understand, I think there is a profound insight, there's a profound exhortation, and there's a profound invitation in Solomon's words. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. The way I want to try to get into this, though, is I want to, I'm sorry, I'm super low tech and I don't really know how to use like slides and graphics and stuff, so I'm just going to talk. And I want to recreate what I'm going to call a visual parable from a film by the Russian filmmaker named Andrei Tarkovsky, who has not made a single Marvel Cinematic Universe film, I realize. But there's this very obscure film, which I guarantee none of you have seen, but that's okay. It's called Stalker. And it is such a fascinating picture of a story that I want to try to kind of recreate it for you for a moment. And we're going to take this as a visual parable, which I realize now I'm orally speaking to you, a visual parable to think through why we need to guard our hearts. Here's the setup of the movie. It's actually very, very simple to imagine. There are three key characters in this film. One is called Ryder, the writer. One is called the professor, so it's a dork fest. And there's this third character called the Russian term is stalker. He's called the stalker. I feel like it's not as creepy as it sounds. He's more like the guide, okay? So we have writer, professor, and the guide. And they are set in the environment of this world, which is a kind of post-apocalyptic, bombed-out wasteland of a world. It's a world where everything has been obliterated by some sort of cataclysm. We don't know what has happened, but the world is a sad, forlorn place. But somewhere in this world, there is this kind of special oasis that is called simply the zone. And inside the zone is a sort of secret sanctuary that is called simply the room. And the Tarkovsky, not super creative with how he describes things, the whole sort of drama and adventure of the film is writer and professor come to Stalker, this guide, because he's the one who can lead them out of the bombed out wasteland and get to the oasis of the zone, and can also lead them within the zone so that they can finally get to this super special place called the room. Why? Why do they want to get there? Because now there's this sort of sci-fi element to the story. What happens is, in the room, you get exactly what you want. So the reason why everybody is going through this arduous trek to get to the zone and to finally reach the room is because in the room, you will get exactly what you want. In the room, you will achieve your heart's desire. In the room, you get what you've been longing for and looking for. But then this really kind of curious, strange thing happens. After all of the labor and danger of finally making it to the oasis and orienting themselves so that they finally get to this room, which is the whole point of everything, just as they are on the very threshold of the room in which they will step through and get their heart's desires, both writer and professor get cold feet. They don't want to step into the room. Why? Isn't that why we're here? Why would you not want to go to a room where you are going to get exactly what you want? Why would you turn around now? I want to read one brief description of this scene by an amazing writer named Jeff Dyer. He recreates it, and you'll get what's happening here, the tension in this moment. Here's the description. They are in a big, abandoned, derelict, dark, damp room with what looks like the remains of an enormous chemistry set floating in a puddle in the middle, as if the zone had resulted from some ill-conceived experiment that went horribly wrong. Off to the right, through a hole in the wall, is a source of light that they all look towards. And for a long while, no one speaks. The air is full of the chirpy, chirpy, cheep, cheep of bird song. It's the opposite of those places where the sedge has withered from the lake and no birds sing. Here the birds are whistling and chirping and singing like mad. And Stalker tells writer and professor, in a way tells us, that we are now on the very threshold of the room. This is the most important moment in your life, he says. Your innermost wish will be made true right here. So here we are. This is the place you've been looking for. This is where you can get exactly what you want. Who wants to go first? And neither professor or writer want to step in the room. Why? Because this creeping epiphany is dawning on them. What if I don't want what I think? In other words, what if when I step into this room, the room gives me what I want, not necessarily what I think I want, or what I believe I want, or what I know I should want? No. The room, in giving you what you want, gives you actually wants that are deeper than you might be conscious of. There is this sense in which, what if I don't want what I think? What if I'm not desiring what I believe I'm desiring? What if the desires that are actually humming around in my heart are longings and desires that I'm not even fully conscious of? What if, in effect, I am not who I think I am? Well, now this room starts to look risky. Now this room starts to look a little scary. Because when I step into this room, it's not like all of a sudden I might achieve everything I thought I wanted. It might unveil something fundamental about who I am. It might actually unveil that I'm not who I think I am, and I don't love what I think I love. Can you identify with that in any way? Like, would you be a little nervous to step in the room? I actually think this gets at something that is common to Christian experience. I mean, in some ways, if I ask you, I'll guess that a number of us at least are Christians in the room, and you're good Jessup University students with an excellent Christ-centered education. And so if I ask you, tell me what you really want, tell me what you want, what you really, really want. You know the right answer to that question, right? You know the answer that you know what you're supposed to really, really want. And actually, I don't mean to sound so cynical in putting it that way, I would also say, I believe you when you tell me what you really want. My question is, would we still feel comfortable stepping in that room? Are we confident that what we think we love and long for and desire actually aligns with our innermost, deepest longings? Are we confident that what we believe we love and long for aligns with what we crave, what we yearn, what we really, really want? This, says Dyer again, is one of the lessons of the zone. Sometimes a person doesn't want to do what he thinks he wants to do. And I think this is the insight, the uncomfortable insight that we have to step into to understand that line in Proverbs. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. How could it be that we get to this place where my loves don't align with what I think? What's the source of this kind of gap, this misalignment, this disconnect between what my head believes and knows and what my heart really, truly longs for? Well, friends, it's because the heart is an inscrutable thing, right? Our hearts are this kind of mysterious, conflicted core of who we are. St. Augustine, who's one of my theological heroes, in his Confessions, when he looks at his own heart, he describes it as terra incognita, a foreign country. He looks at his own heart sometimes, he says, I don't know who I am. I don't know where I am. And in fact, the prophet Jeremiah tells us that sometimes our hearts not only elude us, they deceive us. How do we make sense of this disconnect, this gap, this misalignment between what we think we know, we believe we love and long for, and what we have learned to crave and yearn and desire? I think we will only really kind of fully understand and appreciate the dynamics of that misalignment of head and heart if we recover a way of understanding the Christian life in terms of what I'm going to call habit, the spiritual significance of habit. And I think this is a language that is, especially for those of us who are maybe Protestants, is not readily available to us to think about sanctification and growth in the Christian life. When people talk about Christian life in terms of habit, we get a little nervous, and it sounds like things you do, which then sounds like works, and we know that can't be right. I want to assure you that's not what we're talking about here. I think it's just that we won't ever understand the discomfort of stepping into that room if we don't understand that the loves of our heart are formed more like habits of our character than beliefs of our minds. That is, we will only truly understand the dynamics of what's going on here if we understand that our loves, our longings, our most fundamental desires that drive who we are, right? Above all else, guard your heart. Why? For everything you do flows from it. Your being, your doing, your acting does not sort of flow out of the kind of cognitive information processing that characterizes the mind and intellect as much as it bubbles up from this unconscious incubator of your loves and longings. You do what you want more than you conclude to action on the basis of reflection and deliberation and some sort of syllogistic reasoning. So we have to be attuned to how are our heart habits formed? How are our heart habits trained and shaped? Above all else, guard your heart because everything you do flows from it. You are what you love. That's what Scripture tells us. You are defined by your heart. That's the center and seat of the human person. You are what you love. It's just that now we realize we might not love what we think. How does that happen? Well, here's I'm going to do 3 minutes of philosophy, okay? Will you give me 3? Will you give me 2? 3? 3 minutes of philosophy. When philosophers talk about habits, we don't just mean the kind of external routines and movements that you go through. In philosophy, a habit is a disposition of character. It's like an internal, learned, acquired disposition. It's kind of like you've acquired this default orientation in your life so that when you have a habit, now doing something comes naturally to you, because it's part of the fabric of your very character. You almost don't have to think about it anymore because it's become so habituated into who you are, not just what you think, that it's something that you do without thinking about it. In fact, one of the ways that we describe habits is we describe them as second nature, right? Have you ever heard that phrase? Oh, that's second nature for her. And what we mean when we say, oh, that's second nature for her, is she is the kind of person who couldn't not be like that. Right? That's who she is. It's not just what she believes. It's not just what she thinks. It's who she is. So when we say that love is a habit, what we mean is your loves, your longings, your desires are not sort of conscious, deliberate decisions that you are making, that your loves and longings and desires are in fact these kinds of dispositions of character that get woven into the very fabric of your being so that you are becoming the kind of person who loves this, who acts this way because this is what you long for. Our loves are habits. They are learned, they are acquired. We're not talking about instincts or hardwiring. Your loves are habits that you learn, but they are learned over time. So there are two ways. If I am what I love, and my loves are these habits and dispositions that I acquire, the key question is, how do these habits get formed in me? How do I acquire such habits? Here's the thing. You don't acquire a habit by thinking about it. You can't think your way to holiness. How do we learn habits? Two primary ways, one of which I want to focus on. There are two primary ways. By the way, our name for good habits, the shorthand term for good habits of this sort, we call virtues. The shorthand term for bad habits are vices. Okay? Love is the crowning virtue of the Christian life. How do you acquire these habits? How do we learn them? Two ways. The first is by modeling, actually, imitation. When Aristotle says, if you want to learn how to be a just person, do what the just person does. Imitate the just person. Is that a biblical idea? Absolutely. Be imitators of me as I imitate Christ. Whenever you hear Paul using imitation language, it's virtue language. I'm interested this morning in the second mode of how we learn to love, how we acquire the habits of the heart, and it's what I'm simply going to call practices. You learn these dispositions of character. They become woven into you, into the fabric of who you are. They become sort of inscribed and ingrained in your heart's dispositions by practice. And what we mean by that is by giving yourself over to rhythms and routines and rituals and communal practices that over time sort of aim your heart, train your heart, orient your heart towards some ultimate end that you are longing for and desiring. So you learn these heart habits of love by practice. Maybe another way of saying it simply is our virtues, our heart habits are caught more than they are taught, right? They are caught through what you are doing more than they are taught by what you are informing yourself of. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Our loves, our longings sort of acquire this dispositional orientation and direction towards some ultimate vision of the good because over time we're immersed in rituals and practices and routines that aren't just something that you do, they're doing something to you. Right? These aren't just things that you are, by means of which you are choosing to do something. Actually, something is happening to you when you do them. That's why I want to call those kinds of practices liturgies. Liturgies. I know, again, that might be another word that you have a certain allergy to. I'm asking you to get over it. Think of liturgy as just a shorthand word of talking about love-shaping practices. What are liturgies? Liturgies are love-shaping, heart-forming practices. That's how you learn to want. That's how you learn to love. And here's where the slightly scary part kicks in. there could be all kinds of things that you've been doing that you thought were just something that you were to do that have been doing something to you. Does that make sense? In other words, why is it that I might get to the room and all of a sudden be nervous about stepping in? How could it be that I don't know what I really, really want? Well, what if, in fact, I have been apprenticing my heart to rival gods because I've been devoting myself to practices that I didn't even realize were liturgies. I didn't even realize that they were actually forming in me a longing and a desire for some other vision of an ultimate good that really means to be a rival to God in my life. I'll try one brief example. It comes, so my kids are all, married and grown up and in their 30s. But when my oldest son was in high school, this is 1 million years ago now, it feels like. When he was in high school, he would want me to drop him off to go see friends at the mall. And he would come to me and he would say, "Hey, Dad, will you take me to the temple?" Ho, ho, ho. And not that you guys ever mock your parents this way, but he was like, "Will you take me to the temple?" And even though he was mocking me, it showed that he remembered a conversation we had in which I tried to explain to him that the mall is not just a place where you go. It's not just something that you do. It's doing something to you. It is a religious site. It is a liturgical site. Not because, in the mall you have to be worried about some rival worldview or some messages, or the mall's going to make you think false things. The mall doesn't want you to think about anything, right? It's not about belief. It's not about thought. It's not about doctrine. It's not about worldview. What makes the mall religious? It is a cathedral of consumerism. Now, what is consumerism? Consumerism is a rival gospel. We have to understand this. We spend so much time getting worried about cults and other religions and completely close our eyes to the most powerful rival religions in our life, which is Walmart, Amazon, and Macy's. Not Macy's. I'm sorry, that was a dorky way to put it. Consumerism is an old man way of putting it. Consumerism is a rival gospel because it holds out a promise to you that stuff will make you happy. It's an insane idea, honestly. Like, just as if that were a doctrine, it is ridiculously stupid that stuff will make you happy. It's why I always joke that the gospel of consumerism has no apologetics program, because nobody could possibly make a defensible argument for the belief that stuff will make you happy. It's indefensible. It's ridiculous. Does that mean there are no consumerists in the world? Look around. Look at me. How do we become consumerists? It's not because the mall convinces me of some rival set of ideas. It's because an entire repertoire of liturgies in our culture keeps immersing me in rhythms and routines and practices and stories that keep forming my heart in such a way that my heart learns this story that stuff will make me happy. I practice my way into consumerism because I give myself over to and devote myself to its liturgies, mostly unconsciously. I didn't even know that they were doing something to me. That's what I'm calling, if you put on this set of lenses, and what happens now is you look at our cultural immersion and you look at it now through a liturgical lens, and you realize, oh man, there are liturgies everywhere. There are liturgies everywhere. And when I get to the edge of this room, and it's like somebody gives me a pair of these liturgical lenses, just as I'm about to step in the room, and now I understand why I might not know what I want. I might not realize the extent to which I have apprenticed my heart's longings and desires to some other rival idol. Our idolatries are about desire. They are not about belief. They are what we think will make us happy. They are not about what we believe about X, Y, and Z. So, we are learning to worship in ways that we don't realize. What do we do with that? Well, here again, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. What does it look like for us to guard our hearts? This is where I want you to put the same set of liturgical lenses on, just as a start, and to see what's at stake in participating in the body of Christ is to now intentionally give myself over to rhythms and routines and repertoires, to the practices of Christian worship as counter-formation, as a recalibration of my heart compass, so that now, even though I'm immersed in the world, what happens when I am in the body of Christ and living out the liturgy of Christ, I am, in a sense, recalibrating my heart compass to be pointed to my true north, for whom I am made, which is Christ the King. St. Augustine said, "You have made us for yourself, and our hearts are restless until they rest in you." In worship, that is the space and place where God invites us to find our rest in him, for whom we are made, your heart's true end, so that we can be confident about stepping into that room. Let's close with a word of prayer. Gracious God, you are good, you are true, and you are the lover of our own souls, and you have made us for yourself. Help us to find liberation for our hearts in your story, in your body, in your practices, and the gifts of grace that you give us. For we ask it in Christ's name, amen. Friends, go in peace to love God, to love what God loves, and be not afraid. Amen.